Safety Committee for June 1st, 2023. Councilor Bagley is unavailable this morning, so I'll be stepping in to chair the meeting in place of him. Welcome. And we will start with a call to order and attendance.
Mary Lou McElwain.
Here.
Steve Pesci.
Here.
Mark Siracusa.
Here.
Harold Whitehouse.
Here.
Erica Wygonick.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Mike Maloney.
Here.
Fire Chief Bill McQuillan.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Stephanie Casella, Planning Department.
Here.
Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Great. And just for the record, Erica, you'll be voting this morning as a full member. Okay, let's move on to the financial report, please.
Move to accept as presented.
Second.
Mark is seconded.
Is that a motion?
That was a motion, yep.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of accepting the financial report as presented?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Next will be public comment, and I know we have a lot of people here this morning. I'm going to try to stick to the 2-minute speaking rule if you could. So if you want to summarize your thoughts, if you have more than 2 minutes of material, you can certainly pass that into us, but out of respect for all the people who want to speak, let's try to keep to 2 minutes as a rule. So whoever would like to come up first, introduce yourself and speak to whatever topic you would like to this morning. And do we have a Zoom?
We have Zoom. No one's raised their hand yet.
Okay, so we'll start with the in-person. Who would like to come up first, please? Thank you. Welcome.
Because I usually speak, so you're used to. Good morning, everyone. Ann Pubo at 160 Bartlett Street. I wanted to thank the city staff and the Parking and Traffic Safety Committee for your work and for your time today. I'm here to speak about the Bartlett Street intersection with Thornton, the mini roundabout. I understand that it's creating some kind of division maybe in the neighborhood, and I want to say that I'm in favor of traffic calming measures, and I hope that we, the neighborhood, don't see things in black and white, and we try to work with each other to find a way to slow down traffic, make it work for everybody, not just cars, but also people who live on the street, people who walk and ride their bikes. And I hope we don't rush into making a decision to say, no, this is not right, let's go back to this. Or I hope we listen to the expert, to people who tell us if it's safe or not, and that in the end we trust the data and we leave our feelings aside. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I am Martin Ryan. I live at 221 Woodbury Avenue in Portsmouth. I live 100 yards away from the traffic circle at Bartlett and Thornton Street. At first, when it was installed, I wasn't sure if this was going to work. It looked a little strange. But after several weeks of observing this and observing traffic going through, I have to say that this has been very effective. I'd say it's a success story, that it has calmed traffic, it has moderated flow of traffic, and it's still been effective in moving traffic. So I am very supportive of this. I look forward to its being implemented and made permanent. I think it's a success story, and thank you very much for taking that chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Claire Proud. I live at 108 Sparhawk Street. I was shocked by this mini roundabout. I came upon it one morning. did speak with Eric, and he told me that it was a neighborhood concern and neighborhood grouping had met. Never heard of this. I've lived in that neighborhood over 40 years. Never heard a discussion about this intersection. Where I live, I have a retaining wall to my right, so when I leave Sparhawk, I have to head down towards Clinton Street. And I can't take that left on Clinton, where the old Botany Bay used to be. You look to the left, look to the right, look to the left, look to the right. I can't do it. So my way out of my neighborhood is Thornton. And when the four-way stop went in, I just felt so relieved. I said to my husband, I have such confidence leaving to go down to the West End. The morning of the mini roundabout, I didn't honestly know what I was seeing. I pulled up and I saw a car just stopped in the center, and it threw me for a loop. I went home and I said, I don't know what I just saw, but something's very odd is up there. And I'll say I referred to it as a clown roundabout. It was so tiny, I thought Mini Coopers maybe can go on this roundabout. So I do avoid it. I mean, the first time I tried, I went down to Thornton and I came all the way up and around, and I thought, this is not the way I should be traveling. Then I thought, do I need to go downtown and come all the way back up to Islington? So I don't feel, personally, I don't feel safe. I did go after I talked with Eric, and he told me it was a neighborhood, everybody loved it. I went around and I canvassed my neighbors. I didn't have a clipboard at that time. I just asked people, were you one of the people in favor of it? Were you in favor of this? Who was in favor of this? I've gotten a little bit more information, and I do understand more about it. But I didn't run into anybody that day that said yes. The boys that live right across from where the new crosswalk is said to me how awkward it is for them to sit on their porch and have people literally crossing almost up to their staircase. So a couple days later, I did walk around with a clipboard, but some of the people weren't there. I then had a family emergency. I sent an email. I hope that you got it, Eric. I sent the very few names that I had in their comments. And then my husband got a couple of more while I was away on my family emergency. As I was coming here today, I know that you do make changes. The Middle Road to Middle Street, I thought, it looks like it's going in a better direction than whatever had been happening. Bollards, I don't know if that's your business or not. I know you made changes there. So I would like to feel safe getting out of my own neighborhood, and I don't right now where I did before. So I would ask you to reconsider this mini roundabout.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rendell Leach. I live on the corner of Thornton and Bartlett Street, 5 feet from the traffic circle. We get to hear everything. We get to hear the horns, the vulgarity, and we get to watch everybody, which is kind of unique because we can see all the way down to the hill. We can see trucks come up the hill, all the way to Dennett Street and turn to the traffic circle. I'm just trying to figure out why there are trucks coming up the road when there are 7 signs that say no trucks. The other issue I have is the traffic circle. We bought our house in 1995 and we fought for a 4-way stop, and we finally got it. Before that 4-way stop was put in, there were 16 major accidents at this intersection. I also have a guardrail in front of my house. It was put in by Captain John Condon of the Portsmouth Police Department. He paid for it. Ever wonder why a police officer would want to put a guardrail in front of his house? The front steps were taken out by a young teenager one day, and his mother happened to be a state representative. That's why I have concrete steps in the front of my house. The traffic circle is nice. It slows people down while they're in the traffic circle, but once they get out of it, ding, they're gone. We watch it every day going down Bartlett Street. I say we put the 4-way stop back in, we do the calming on the road, the bump outs and everything, the trees, and if you're going to put bumps on the road, if they're like Maplewood Ave, you can go over that one at 35 miles an hour. If you're going to put them in like Banfield, where you have to slow down to 15 miles an hour to get over that thing. And I say from the traffic circle to the hill, there should be 2 of them. I watch school buses go down there in the morning. They're doing at least 30 going down through there. And I'll call the Portsmouth School Department and I'll complain about it. I don't have a problem complaining about it. That's the police department. I also think that there should be a bump, like on Banfield Road, on Thornton Street between Bartlett and Woodbury. And there should be one between on Bartlett Street between Thornton and Dennett, because that's the biggest speedway right there. They got to get to 95 right away. And the other thing we ought to do to keep trucks off the road is to shut down those 2 ramps coming out of the traffic circle to come up to Woodbury Ave. You can go down them, but not up them. That would keep the trucks coming out of the neighborhood all at once. And that's about what I have to say.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Bill Blum, 236 Kate Street. Here to speak on 2 items. To change it up a little bit, been the former chair of the property committee at South Church. I did see in the packet the relocation of the second ADA space to the more closer to the fire station. That should have been done years ago, honestly. The reason why is the ADA access for the church is actually at the back of the building. And if you are chair-bound and you are in the front parking space, there's literally no way to get into the church. There's 5 granite steps to get up, and then if you go in the side, there's 6 steps to go down and then 6 to go up. So I completely agree with that decision. Also, the curb cut's already there, so you're just painting it. And also, I'm here to speak about the mini roundabout. When I first moved to Portsmouth in 2007, I rented the Yellow House on the corner of Morning Street and Bartlett Street. And I witnessed a lot of change happening with all the trucks going through there every day to go to Reaching Lumber. I witnessed the trucks going to the old laundromat there. I forget the name of that place. But in any event, moved to Kate Street, lived through the S-turn of nightmare where there were no sidewalks. I couldn't walk my kids down the street. So change has happened, and sometimes change is something that has positive impacts and it has negative impacts. I do realize that there was also a lot of public discussion and comment on both sides about the relocation of the intersection under the train bridge at Kate Street when they put in that extension. The hopes with that project was to alleviate the flow through this actual neighborhood that we're talking about this morning and divert all the traffic there. As a human being who's pretty good at common sense, I'm challenged with the fact that anyone wants to go from the train bridge on Bartlett Street or Kate Street through this neighborhood, through a stop sign, mini roundabout, whatever it is, then take another left to get onto Woodbury, then take another left to get into the traffic circle, when you could just flow to the left going under the train bridge, zigzag a couple turns, and you're sitting at the light on the bypass. I'm also challenged with people who have issues with how to actually use the roundabout. This is New Hampshire. If you're in the car and you're challenged with the roundabout that was just put in on Thornton, if you're heading to the traffic circle, which is actually a roundabout, it's a good test in the neighborhood on how to use one before you actually get to the big one. So with someone who can speak about changes in their life and how if you just sit there and don't do anything, nothing gets done. But if you listen to the experts and you trust the data, and you realize that there's a larger picture here that you might not have all the information on at the time of that the decision has to be made, it's best to trust the data and not your feelings. So I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street. I drive through the mini roundabout approximately 6 times a day. I'm very familiar with the idea of a yield sign, although other people don't seem to know what that is. I also understand that when you're in a traffic circle, if you arrive first, the person to the right of you gets to go next. If they're at the same time, all of those little rules that I learned when I was 18 years old, actually, I still use them. Unfortunately, most people don't. It's my experience that the mini roundabout has turned into the Indianapolis Speedway. People going straight across have now, after been using it for, has it been there a month, have figured out how to go through there at least at 35 miles an hour easily. I usually go through and take a left, so if I come in to Portsmouth, I come in and I take a left onto Thornton, and then I take a right onto Bartlett Street, so I'm making that slip right. But often I found that people going straight didn't even see me over there. I've had a lot of little misses there where people didn't even notice me sitting there. The people going straight have figured out the speed. You can go pretty quick. I drive 3 different vehicles. I have a Toyota Camry, which sits pretty low, which I'm very glad the bollards are there so I can tell where the curbing is. We have a Toyota RAV4, which sits pretty high, so it's easy to transgress through there at a pretty good speed. And I also have a pickup truck that has a double cab. I will tell you that I went through the circle with the pickup truck in the double cab. It was my 3rd time driving the thing. I almost took out the man on the corners, not his front steps, but the light pole in front of it. I had to back up to be able to make that curve successfully. So I drove it again the next day just to be sure it wasn't my skill, but it is tricky to get through there with a pickup truck that's above more than a 2-seater in the front. So I think that we need to come up with another solution. I think that it would be interesting to see what would happen with snow removal. How would you get all the snow out of there? You need every inch of that space to get through there. That's going to be a huge problem. People are not stopping at all. Before, they did a California stop. Now they're just flying through it. And I think it's very, very dangerous. I've stopped people in the grocery store, at Hannaford's. I forgot where else. I saw a few people in town and said, what do you think of the circle? The majority of answer I've gotten is it's not the best solution, that at least with the stop sign, people slowed down, even if they did a California stop. And somebody actually said to me the role of stop signs is that the police should enforce them to the point where people realize that you can't go flying through them. Sorry. But you can't be there all the time. But I think once people realize that it's being monitored more carefully, a lot of times people use them. The demo presented in the packet shows it was studied for 3 days. I'm thinking that it was studied longer than that, but it only shows 3 days of data. I was going to start writing down when to look at it so you could see the interesting things that I see when you go through there 6 times a day. You get to see very exciting things. I'm curious to see if anybody wrote down what the speed was prior to, through that intersection, prior to putting in the circle. I'm curious if you surveyed a lot of people in the neighborhood. I think a lot of people are not aware that they had any input into it, which was evident by the woman who spoke. And I think the amount of cars that are not yielding at all, they just see that thing coming and they drive right through it, is amazing to me. How many people don't even slow down now. That they've perfected it. In the beginning, people were going slow. That May 11th through May 13th, everybody was going slow trying to figure out how big that thing is and how do you do that. When you come up to it, it does look like a clown thing, I have to admit it. But it is tricky to think about it because of the shape. It's different for most people. If you've never been to Europe, you're not used to these many things.
Elizabeth, do you want to wrap up your comments?
Yep. But I think this should not be moved forward. I think it needs to be discussed with the whole neighborhood, and I think it needs to be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from attendees? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Beth Lamontagne Hall. I live at 170 Bartlett Street, and I am the street 170 Bartlett.
170 Bartlett. Okay.
So I'm one of those people who uses this intersection multiple times a day. My daughter goes to New Franklin, and I feel like the roundabout is an improvement. I know that it's part of a bigger plan to ease traffic on Bartlett, and I think that this is a good first step for that. I have observed that because the circle is very narrow and you don't have to turn so far to the right to go around it, that there are vehicles that just kind of shimmy through it and just go right through it. And sometimes it's a little fast. So it seems like, I know that this is a pilot. For the full version, I think that there might need to be a tighter turn or a wider situation where you're forcing vehicles to slow down a little bit more. But generally speaking, I think that when this is combined with the other work that's planned for Bartlett, that it's going to be an improvement for slowing everything down. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Eric, do we have any? Oh, sorry.
Just real quick.
Yes, please.
Becky Vardell. I live at 314 Bartlett Street. I'm just 2 houses removed from this intersection, and I can see the intersection clearly from my kitchen window. So when I am home, it's, I have a very clear view of it. And I've been there 13 years. The 4-way stop, while somewhat effective, was not overall was not very effective. And my children also went to New Franklin. They crossed as pedestrians, as do I, every day at this intersection. And what we would see with the 4-way stop regularly would be cars not stopping for even children at that crosswalk. I would watch it happen. The mini roundabout, initially was incredibly excited about it because, as several people have mentioned, it slowed traffic dramatically. People are confused, and when they're confused, they slow down, and I think that was very, very effective. I am seeing, as several people have mentioned, an increase in speed now that people have figured it out, but I think there's a solution to that. I think if there's space, you can, as the previous woman just mentioned, maybe make the turn a little sharper so that people can't do the little jog and just go straight at a rapid rate of speed. And I have a question, which maybe will be addressed here, is what would it look like as a permanent fixture? The main complaint I'm hearing as I canvass friends and neighbors, if there's a complaint, is the appearance. People seem to be more caught up in the appearance than the effectiveness, which I think is really interesting. And if they don't like it or don't feel safe going through it, there are plenty of other avenues out of the neighborhood. I do feel that the overall traffic calming that will be happening on Bartlett will be a dramatic improvement, and this could be a good part of it. I'm open to either option. I hate to see neighbors fighting with neighbors. So, but overall, I think it's a very positive turn of events and could be made better once it's permanent.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Yes.
I assume it's okay to talk about something else.
You can speak to whatever you'd like.
My name is Liza Hewitt. I live at 726 Middle Road. Believe it or not, it'll be 3 years next month that I first came before this committee. I've been here many times, as you all know, talking about the speed on Middle Road and the safety on Middle Road and Islington Street. I don't think there's a whole lot more I can say at this point, so I'm not going to go on with that. I would just strongly encourage you to please make the speed limit 25 miles per hour on those 2 streets permanently. I know it's not going to solve all the problems, but it certainly has the appearance of slowing people down. I want to thank Peter Rice for his support on this, because I know he's spoken in meetings and been supportive, and Eric's helped as well. The removal of the slip lane on Middle and Middle has done a lot for that end of Middle Road, and I'm hoping that we can figure out something to do at my end of Middle Road as well. I just had one other thing that I just wanted to throw out there. Riding my bike around town, I've had some real challenges with the screening on top of the Jersey barriers for the outdoor dining, especially at the press room and at the corner of Congress Street and Middle and Islington and Maplewood. You can't, as far as the press room goes, you're out into the middle of the street before you can see what's coming. That screening has got to be almost 10 feet tall, and it's pretty solid screening. Granted, it's kind of one store down from the corner, but if you're coming out of there on your bicycle, if you're coming out in a car, if you're walking, you cannot see what's coming from the bridge end. And I thought that there was a rule on how tall those barriers could be, but apparently they're putting them up anyway. So I'd like to know if somebody, maybe Eric, could go out there on his bicycle and check that out, because those cars coming down Daniel Street do not have to stop. That's not a stop sign. So they're just coming and you can't see what's coming. I was nearly clipped in my car, and I don't feel safe there on a bicycle at all. And then the other corner is up at Jumpin' Jays. They've, I know they put lattice work up the beginning of the season last year. We talked to Eric. That was taken down. Then they grew shrubs, which got more and more dense as the summer went on. They've got the shrubs back again. And, if you have 3-foot trees without any branches right now, in a month, they're going to be full of branches. You cannot see. That intersection is so incredibly dangerous as it is, that adding those, adding that screening at the Goat or at Jumpin' Jays is really concerning. As I drove up through there on Saturday night, I watched a car, this is an aside, take a right to go the wrong way down Congress Street and then pulled a big Huey in the front in front of Flatbread. So people don't know what to do. It's crazy at that intersection. It is as it is, and anything you can do to help it would be much appreciated.
Thank you very much. Any other speakers in the room? Eric, do we have any hands raised online?
Yes, we do have
Okay.
some. We have William Davis.
Good morning, William.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Bill Davis. I live at 339 Bartlett Street. 339 is the last house on the north side of Bartlett as you approach the now notorious intersection with Thornton Street. And due to its location, it provides me pretty consistent observation of activities there. The mini roundabouts accomplish much of what I'd hoped for, more controlled approaches and negotiation of the intersection. I frequently get annoyed looks, honks, and sometimes even hand gestures by speeding motorists as I back into my driveway, which ironically, I only do that to improve my odds of getting out at certain busy times of the day. Unfortunately, the former stop signs were not effective. Whether it's a mini roundabout, speed tables, or other traffic calming measures, I support them. Begrudgingly, I accept that Bartlett Street is treated by many as a means to an end, to be transited as rapidly as possible. But to some of us, it's our neighborhood. Please help us restore some balance to the equation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Next one is Rick Beckstead.
Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So first, I would just like to go and thank the committee for the recommendation of keeping Middle and Islington Street at 25 miles an hour. As I've said before in other meetings, I've lived on Islington for more than 20 years now, raised my family there, and I have never seen a slower, more susceptible neighborhood there, both for cars and for pedestrians. We have more pedestrians since that sidewalk was put in than we've ever had before. And that will lead me into my next point on the Thornton and the Bartlett. Bartlett is about to get the same type of treatments that Islington has gotten as far as with the curbing, with the narrow roads, to be able to slow traffic down. And enforcement is what it comes down to. I know that road will probably end up being a 20 mile an hour, even though that is not to the standards of what the RSA is, that we cannot enforce below 25 miles an hour. We do have many roads enforcement at 20, and hopefully that will go and work. And that leads me into the traffic circle. I drive that road almost every day, and I have seen the speed and the use of that actually increase. It is now in favor of cars, not the neighborhood. Cars are slipping through there as quickly as they can and continuing on a path and accelerating as they come out of there. I think that the stop signs, when it comes down to as far as people not being effective, it comes down to enforcement. I probably 8 years ago received a ticket doing a rolling stop, as many of us do. It was a $75 fine. I paid my fine and I moved on. And I've been, I guess, more cognizant of stop signs than I ever have been before. It was my first violation. I would definitely ask the police department, and they are extremely overworked, and I know that they can only be at so many places so many times, but the stop sign is the most effective to stop a car. Living here for 40 years, it is a route. I know there are new people that are in the area there, not so much as long as I have been here 40 years, but that is a direct route for people to go on the Spalding Turnpike. You are not going to convince people to go on Cape Street and to go onto a traffic circle and take somewhat life into your hands, because we do not have the best traffic circle that's there from the state of New Hampshire. There is serious concerns with that, because in Massachusetts, you actually yield opposite of what we do in New Hampshire. You yield going in. Massachusetts, you yield in the circle, and the oncoming traffic going the circle has the right of way, which makes it very confusing being so close to Massachusetts. I would take serious consideration to be able to go and do the upgrades at Bartlett Street, see where that is. This intersection does not meet the DOT standards of 125 feet in order to be able to put a roundabout in it. I observed several of the letters that the committee get, and I certainly hope they will take that into consideration, restore the stop signs to make it safe for everyone at that intersection. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next one is Anna Lejean Guth.
Good morning, Anna.
Anna likes it. Anna likes it because it's European. The only reason why Anna likes it.
Hi, Rick. It's nice to be.
Hello there. Oh, I'm still on.
Disagree. So my name is Anna Leon Guth. I live on 147 Bartlett Street, and I love it. I love the traffic circle, and I do feel it's increasing safety, and it's slowing down speed, and it's making it easier to get in and out of that intersection. Yes, it's slightly tight, but it's okay. There can be improvements done, but I think it's doing what it's meant to be done, and I like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Teresa Hill.
Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning. My name is Teresa Hill. I live at 340 Thornton Street at the corner of Bartlett, right at the roundabout. I'm not in favor of the roundabout. It may have slowed down some traffic, but it's brought more issues, including lots of confusion, lots of horns, lots of yelling. Cars that arrive at the same time seem to have no clue. The roundabout is not big enough to determine who is in this roundabout first, even. And I've seen a lot of near misses. The streams of traffic that come up Bartlett are not yielding. So often the traffic backs up on Thornton. The pedestrians, the new sidewalks are set back from the intersection. I understand why that needs to be done. But when I go through the roundabout, they're not visible to me as a driver on either side. This intersection has been an issue for a long time. I've lived here since 1995. And the four-way stop signs helped. Thank you, Lindsay. The Kate Street opening up has helped. Having officially no trucks in the neighborhood has helped. And I'm hoping that the new sidewalks all up and down Bartlett and an even narrower travel lanes, including at the intersection, so those turns are going to be tighter according to the plans. I also hope that my neighbors on Lower Bartlett and the city will be planting some of those 400 trees, all of which will help slow the traffic, making Bartlett look more like the rest of our historic neighborhood, which the roundabout does not. Please bring back the stop signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Nancy Johnson.
Good morning, Nancy.
I keep muting her. Sorry about that.
Are you there, Nancy?
I'm here, but it keeps saying I'm unmuted.
Okay, you're unmuted now. Go ahead.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Nancy and Brian Johnson, 81 Clinton Street, residents since 1976. We have walked and driven through and by the temporary roundabout numerous times and have the following observations. Traveling Bartlett from Islington towards Dennett, cars would slow down for the roundabout seem to hit their brakes around 100 feet from the roundabout. Traveling from Islington to Dennett, many cars, probably those who have previously gone through the circle, do not appreciably slow down when going straight through. Cars exiting the roundabout going towards Islington appear to be speeding up within about 100 feet of the roundabout. When a string of cars is traveling from Islington to Dennett, once one vehicle enters the roundabout, the rest follow regardless of waiting traffic on Thornton. Traveling on Thornton towards Woodbury, the sight line to Bartlett is very poor, and Thornton traffic cannot see Bartlett traffic until they are almost in the roundabout. Long pickups have difficulty making the left turns. We have observed a number riding up on the center island. These are not 18-wheelers, these are regular long pickups. We have observed left-turning traffic stopping in the middle of the roundabout a number of times. Maybe confused tourists, I don't know. The new asphalt crosswalk, this is a big concern for me. The new asphalt crosswalk on the Islington side of Thornton is much too steep for safety. As an older pedestrian, I'm afraid to use it even with a supportive arm and my cane, so I have to now walk down to the next driveway, cross in the middle of Thornton, and I'm right in the traffic that is backed up from the roundabout. It's not a safe tip down. Snowplows. How feasible is it that during a heavy snowstorm, snowplows will be able to navigate this circle so as to make it safe for cars and not tear up the center islands on the edges? Will the plow blades rip up the center of the circle or the edges? And as ammunition for this concern, just look at the snow plowing under the railroad bridge on Bartlett Street and the sidewalk there, which is so often blocked in the winter. We've had to turn around and come back. Can't walk the Plaza 800 because it is a wall. This is going to be even more difficult. We were part of the neighborhood group that fought long and hard for the four-way stop signs. They may not have been perfect, but they came out in the blink of an eye, and that was heartbreaking to see them come out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
And now I check that to go down.
That's all.
Okay. Any last comments from people in the room? Last call on Zoom. Oh, we have one speaker. Yes, sorry.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Carl Deemer at 337 Aldridge Road. And I just here again, on behalf of some of the neighbors that I have a lot of questions. Last fall, we met a couple different times. I've been to the committee at that time. I think it was September and November. And we were all under the impression and were assured, I thought, that we were going to be getting speed bumps put in on Aldridge Road. Eric, I know you've reached out to me and said that that it's not in the CIP, when in fact, I think if you go back, I think it was pretty much, we were all looking forward to getting them put in the spring. And I know that DPW has a full plate, so we're just sitting here waiting, and then that's why I reached out to you to find out what the status is, only to find out it's in the CIP. We still have that same problem, you know, this is, going back 37 years now. And, you talk about the roundabout, it seems like a more recent thing, and hopefully got the patience, hopefully you don't have to wait 38 years to get some traffic calming done. But it's just, it's become, pretty intolerable with the vehicles going down, Aldridge Road at a high rate of speed, just cutting through from Middle to Islington. It's just a fact of life. And we need to put some speed bumps in there. I know you have the table at Boss and Aldridge, but by the time they go by that, they pick up speed again, and we just got a ton of little kids in that neighborhood now. I mean, I see 12 kids waiting on the school bus at the corner of Sewell and Aldridge every morning. And there's just, I know that we're just waiting for an accident to happen. I just think we need to have that traffic calming measure that we discussed before, and it would be very, very effective. I know that the police department has done, some enforcement in that area, and I'm glad to see that they're out doing enforcement all over the city, and the motorcycles are out. That's an awesome thing, because I know that's very effective. However, I just we don't feel the love over there as much as we want to with traffic enforcement. Because of the neighbors, they tell me they just don't see the the cruisers down there or somebody down there as much, if at all. But I do see it around town, and we'd like to see if we get some more enforcement temporarily until we can get those done. I just don't know what's my next step. Do I, if it's not in the CIP, which we all assumed it was, and it was going to get done, and I'll look for your advice, but do I need to go next to the city council to try to get that pushed ahead in the CIP? And again, I can go down with 30, 35 people if that's what it takes to make an impression. But we're at that point. I'm just telling you, we're all done. We need to go ahead and have something happen at this point. So I appreciate anything you could do. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Carl. Okay, I think we'll close the public comment period. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful comments and input. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Acting Chairman, I know it's not the formality to speak out, but we heard from a lot of people. They're all over the map, and I'd like to have at least comment on the roundabout.
Well, it is on the agenda, so when we get to the agenda item, I think
Okay,
the staff will
all right.
respond to some of the comments.
Some people will be leaving, see?
Yep.
That's why I wanted to have it mentioned now.
Mr. Chair,
Make a motion
make a motion to bring item 7, what are we looking at? Item 7A.
7A.
7A?
Moving forward.
Move that forward if I have a second.
Second.
Just a comment. I know Councilor Moreau has to leave, and I would like to do the State Street presentation. Can we move it to right after the State Street presentation? Is that a good compromise to move it up? Would you be willing to accept that?
I'd be willing to
Friendly
accept that
amendment.
modification.
I accept.
Okay. So let's do that. We'll move 7A up to following the State Street presentation, which we'll now move to. So we're going to go on to item 5, presentations, and this is a presentation on the State Street two-way traffic modeling. And I want to acknowledge the counselor that's here who was very involved in that project, and we're all looking forward to seeing the presentation right now.
Can I?
Yes, Erica.
So I worked on this project, so I'm going to recuse myself for this conversation and go sit at that end because that's where you sit when you're a visitor.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Hello, everyone. Just want to make sure I'm close enough to the mic.
You can pull it forward.
Yeah, pull a little bit. Great. And please just let me know. I have a tendency to back up from the mic. Thank you. Hello, I'm with Wall Consulting Group, also with Erica. My name's Austin Fula. I think everyone knows Erica here. Just a little background on me. I live in Lebanon, New Hampshire, so the other side of the state, professional engineer, professional traffic operations engineer. I've been working with the city for years on this project, and I've done similar smaller projects in the past. Just as a quick introduction. So we've been working with Eric on this, looking at the potential of a two-way conversion on State Street from the current one-way. Just to give a quick overview of what we'll be covering, I'll try to keep it pretty brief and high level. I know there's a lot of other things to discuss during this time, but we think it's worthwhile just to give a little bit of model background information, just a little history of the model and the current status of this downtown traffic model. We think that's just useful background information before getting into the results, some of the traffic congestion results of looking at State Street as a two-way. And then finally, when we look at the model results, we're looking at with a drawbridge lift and without a drawbridge lift. As anyone who lives here knows, right, like it's very common during a congested peak hours or during the 5 to 6 p.m. window to also have the Memorial Bridge drawbridge lift happen, which obviously increases traffic. So just a little background, you can see in the big graphic on the right side, the traffic model basically covers all of downtown Portsmouth, right? So it covers, you know, the key Maplewood, Middle Street corridor all the way over to the bridges. So this is really an excellent tool for looking at any traffic operations within downtown Portsmouth, right? And it has really all the little side streets and alleys even to really, so you can get really thorough understanding of traffic operations and how changes impact downtown Portsmouth traffic. This model you see in the graphic to the bottom left, the little yellow squares are vehicles, and it has all the complex pieces this downtown has, right? So there's pedestrians in this traffic model, there's the bus routes, there's on-street parking, and this is really used to try to understand traffic flow through these areas, right? Like there's a lot of friction, there's a lot of things going on in downtown Portsmouth, and this model we think really does an excellent job at capturing how traffic operates in this area. I do think it's important to note, though, it is a traffic model, right? This model is designed just to look at traffic. It does have pedestrians in it, but it's not utilized to understand pedestrian traffic flow. It's really meant to understand how pedestrians impact vehicles. And just a little more background on the model. This model is really used to understand the impact of bigger changes on the roadways, right? So if you add a traffic signal, if you install a roundabout, for example, if you add a new road somewhere, or in this case, if you're looking at making a currently one-way street into a two-way, this is really where this model excels. It's really good at understanding, I think, the nuances of complex traffic operations, something that I think realistically it's hard to analyze without a model like this. So it really captures all the nuances of how vehicles reroute and how drivers behave. Just a little background on this model. I'm not going to go into this too much, but we've been utilizing this since 2017. Both me and Erica at a previous firm developed this back in 2017, and this traffic model has been used for a handful of projects since then. It's been used pretty consistently throughout that time. And we just wanted to give this background to say we think it does a really good job. We've used it on a handful of projects in downtown Portsmouth. We've refined it. We've updated the model, you know, to newer traffic counts, to newer traffic data, and we feel really good about it. It does a really good job of understanding and modeling downtown traffic. So this model we worked on now, we started this update probably about, I think, end of 2022, was to reflect a condition 10 years out from now. So we're looking at traffic flows in 2032. So we got a lot of great data for this. So we got the city of Portsmouth collects traffic counts, so we wanted to understand the traffic patterns, specifically coming out of COVID. There has obviously been traffic changes during COVID. Frankly, peak hour traffic is now a little lower, even if daily traffic volumes are equal or even higher than what they used to be. Peak hours aren't quite as pronounced. So we update the traffic model with this new data coming out of COVID. And then we utilized some of this data to predict out to 2032. And we also looked at what planned development is going to occur in downtown, what has been permitted. So we combined all that to, I think, come up with something that we feel gives a very reasonable projection for traffic volumes going out to 2032. One final piece of background information, which I think is just very useful to cover before we get into the results, is we did look at, so we looked at the 5 to 6 p.m. peak hour, because that's the busiest time in downtown Portsmouth, and we modeled what happens during that 5 to 6 p.m. peak hour if there's a drawbridge opening. And we looked at it for duration, a drawbridge opening duration of 6.5 minutes. Back in 2017, we got data from New Hampshire DOT, and this was the typical length for a closure. There are obviously much longer closures that do occasionally happen. You'll get a 25, 30-minute closure, but this was the most typical case, so this is what we thought would be reasonable to model. So this graphic gives a summary of what we're looking at for the potential one-way to two-way conversion along State Street. So we're looking at doing this, or the potential of making State Street a two-way all the way from Middle Street all the way to the Memorial Bridge. Can you jump back for a second? Sorry, Eric. And I think the other thing that's useful to note here is that you can see there's a little red line between Scott Ave and Dutton Ave. That connection, if there was a two-way conversion, that connection would be closed. Thanks. So the first piece we wanted to look at, up on the screen you see on the left side is the current condition, so State Street being a one-way, and then on the right side is the potential two-way State Street. So the first piece of this we looked at was what's the effect on vehicle delays. You can see up in the top right, we looked at level of service levels. So level of service A, just a very high-level quick summary, level of service A infers very minimal delay to vehicles, right? There's maybe only occasionally a vehicle in front of you at a signal. You're really only waiting a few seconds. And then on the other side of things, you have level of service F. So level of service F means, there's significant queues. You might be waiting a couple cycles to get through an intersection. You might be 20 vehicles back, so really significant congestion. So without the drawbridge lift, in both cases, it's fairly similar. Most of these intersections operate with fairly minimal delays. And I think, the two-way, I'll talk about this a little more later, but the two-way generally operates almost as well as the one-way. There's slightly more delay in the case of the two-way, but it's fairly similar, and there's no critical issues. As you can see, all intersections are level of service C or better.
Warning.
So So the second case we looked at was with that 6.5 minute drawbridge lift during the peak hour, and obviously that overall is going to make congestion and vehicle delays more significant in this area. The key takeaway we found from this is that, so on the left you can see in the one-way State Street scenario, Market Square operates in a level of service D. And a big piece of that, right, is you have this surge of traffic that comes off Memorial Bridge and comes down Daniel. So you have this, 6.5 minutes of vehicles waiting on the bridge coming in from Maine, and that all surges into Daniel Street. That is less of an issue with State Street being a two-way, because less vehicles have to go up to Daniel, right? So vehicles can come off the bridge and turn onto State Street. Vehicles, let's say going northbound on Pleasant Street, can now take a left on State Street and don't have to go all the way into Market Square. So operations there would be expected to improve. However, on the other side of things, in the two-way scenario, with State Street being a two-way, as expected, State Street and Middle Street operates quite a bit worse. I think it's still within the acceptable range for a downtown environment. Level service DE isn't ideal, but can be tolerable in a busy, vibrant downtown like Portsmouth. But that area definitely would see more congestion. And similar with Congress Street and Maplewood, level of service, that would be expected to be level of service D instead of C. The other thing we examined with the drawbridge lift is, what does the queuing look like? Obviously, this is a big concern. When the bridge closes, queues can build up pretty significantly through downtown. So if you see the blue lines, so the generally shorter lines, are how long the vehicles will be queued up waiting for the bridge to reopen. And then the green lines are in the case of the two-way. I think, as expected, the queues for the two-way scenario are slightly longer, and I think one of the simple explanations is there's just less space on State Street. Currently, there's 2 lanes on State Street, and generally folks utilize that left lane if they're waiting to get in the bridge, but it does give some ability, that right lane gives ability for vehicles to get around that queue or even queue up in longer closures there. So I think it's pretty expected to see this. And I think this graphic gives a good summary of how the one-way and how the two-way scenarios compare. I think just our analysis showed that in general, there's slightly more vehicle congestion with the two-way. It's nothing critical. Everything our modeling shows is that the two-way scenario would still work, but there's a little more vehicle delay. Queues are a little longer. Travel times are a little longer. There's a little more vehicle congestion, but we don't have an exact percentile of how much, but I think it would definitely feel a little more congested, but still within the range of acceptable traffic operations. Jump. Another piece of the queuing, this was really interesting to us. I think before we really dug into this modeling, we didn't quite realize we didn't quite think as much about the secondary queue. I think, at least personally, I always think of, okay, the bridge is closed, a queue builds up when the bridge is closed. But then once the bridge is open, there's this surge of traffic coming in from Maine, and that's vehicles that have been waiting for 7 minutes there. So there's quite a bit of secondary traffic that comes in and also makes the network more congested. So if you can see here in the one-way State Street scenario, or currently what's out there, you get a decent queue that builds up on State Street trying to take that left to basically do that U-turn around from Dutton onto Scott Ave. Because there's so much traffic coming off Memorial Bridge, it's very difficult to take that left turn. So with that movement removed, that queue doesn't exist in the two-way. But on the flip side, in the two-way scenario, there's now the westbound approach at State Street and Middle Street. So a decent sized queue builds there. It doesn't get quite back to Fleet Street, but it's probably 3/4 of the way back to Fleet Street. And then there are slightly longer queues on Court Street. One of the final pieces we want to talk about is what it would entail to do this potential conversion of Straight Street to a two-way street. there'd obviously be, when you now have westbound traffic on State Street, you would need new signal equipment, right? There'd have to be new signal heads for vehicles heading westbound on State Street at Pleasant Street and Fleet Street. There would need to be, we estimate 1 to 2 parking spots would need to be removed on State Street westbound coming into Middle Street. Our modeling really showed that you would need a second westbound approach there. You'd need a short right turn lane for vehicles to get around heading westbound right onto Middle Street. And then finally, the most significant piece of this is there'd be quite a bit of intersection reconstruction. So I think there's some curbing that would need to move. There's an island that would need to move at the Middle Street and State Street intersection. And our very cost estimator to help us with this, but our very rough estimate was this would be about $1 million, very high level estimate, about $1 million of construction costs for these improvements. So just in summary, I know I've talked about most of this already in this presentation, but we really believe, or the modeling really shows that the two-way scenario would operate acceptably, similar to how it operates currently, and this would still work going out to even the year 2032. Operations just in general, I think regardless of whether there's a drawbridge lift or if there isn't a drawbridge lift, there'd just be slightly more traffic congestion in downtown, right? We have a few bullet points up here. There'd be slightly more vehicle delay. Average travel times would slightly increase, and vehicle speeds would slightly decrease. These are all very modest changes. The modeling does show it would operate well, but there would be a slight change there. And I think the final thing that we found interesting, which is good to note, is we do think the modeling showed there's less rerouting of vehicles in the two-way with the drawbridge lift, which we think just shows some resilience, that there's not quite as many vehicles trying to weave around to try to sneak new paths through the city with the option of having State Street a two-way. There's still slightly more congestion, but there is less rerouting, so vehicles can stick to their normal routes, which we thought was interesting and I think in favor of the two-way scenario. So that's all we had to cover. Wanted to keep it brief. I know obviously we have a lot of other things to talk about. I'm not sure if we want to do questions now or if anyone wants to go back and go through any other slides.
I'd like to make a motion to allow questions outside of the public comment period to acknowledge Councillor Moreau, as well as Chairman of the Planning Board, Chelman, and other residents that may have questions. To put this in the context of the city's actions, this is informative to the Market Square revisioning effort that's planned. We don't anticipate any action to implement this type of thing in the immediate future. Good. There will be additional opportunities for the general public to discuss this and to weigh in, but I just wanted to, in the near term, I know, Councilor Moreau has some personal interest relative to this, and Chairman Chelman has professional expertise in this area, so I wanted to give them the opportunity to. So that's my motion. If there's a second.
Second. Yeah.
All those in favor of that procedure? Yes. Councilor, would you like to add any comments to what you've seen this morning?
I don't have a lot to say other than really excited. My vision of this and request of this last August was the idea of, as Peter Rice has stated, to redo Market Square and to try to eventually move southbound traffic onto State Street. And it does decrease speed, which is actually a good thing. That's one of the things that I heard from people I talked about that really think that State Street becomes like a racetrack because it's two-way and you're next to someone and everyone tries to get around each other. So by making it two-way, it's really making it slow down, which makes it more pedestrian friendly in the end. So I think those are all positive and exciting things. And I think if we look at it with the revamping and try to make Market Square and Congress Street less vehicle intensive and more pedestrian intensive, I think this is a good step in that direction. So thank you. I really appreciate this. I have a closing to run to. Bye.
Thank you, Councilor. Rick, would you like to add any comments?
Rick Chalman, I live on State Street, and thank you for the presentation. I think there aren't any surprises in what I heard. It all makes a lot of sense. And the things that the model doesn't address, pedestrian flow and also vehicle speeds, that probably is in the model but wasn't reported. I would expect speeds on State Street to come down with two-way flow. But more importantly, the pedestrian activity on State Street that I walk every day a lot. I walk around downtown a lot, as people probably know. On a one-way street that it is now, drivers entering from side streets only look one direction. So half of the pedestrians approaching intersections aren't seen. And it's quite common that if people are paying attention, which some of us learn to do, some people don't. I've seen a number of elderly people almost get struck, and one person got bumped right in front of me from a driver just looking to the left for oncoming traffic, not paying attention to the pedestrian flow. So that's a benefit. And one other benefit, in prior discussions of this, by having two-way flow during the bridge lift, I think there'd be additional access for emergency vehicles to access to the east that they have currently. So, because they can use where drivers can't go. And that was it. I hadn't really planned to speak, but thank you for the opportunity.
Do any of our committee members have questions for the consulting team?
Just parking.
Yeah, I'm fine. Go ahead.
Just the question on how is it going to impact? Is there anything in the model that shows the parking for residents and businesses and how that's going to impact their daily lives currently? Has that come up at all?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
People are currently parking on street because they live there and also their businesses. So does a change have an impact on the current parking inventory that's currently on the street?
Like we mentioned, it does. I believe obviously we haven't done a detailed engineering design study, but you can fit all the existing parking in besides those 1 to 2 parking spaces when you approach Middle Street. But I think the rest, if I get where you're at, so you're thinking about you're looking at the rest of State Street, right?
Yeah. Well, if you make the change, how's that going to impact the current parking inventory for on-street parking for the residents and the businesses that are currently there? Is there a plus or is there a minus, or is it the same? Or you don't know at this point?
So I think what you're saying is the only impact is at the intersection approach. That on-street parking remains in your model.
Yes, but with the caveat that that's not what we did a detailed analysis of. Obviously, when you flip the direction of traffic, there might be small changes, and maybe Erica or Eric can speak to this, but there might be small changes, but we think overall it would be a similar number of parking spaces.
Yeah, there's enough space now for the parking. There's 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes now. The model assumed 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes now. The model did assume, we did some iterations in terms of what do we need to make this work. Part of our intention here was to do the least amount of change that would make the system work. So, it starts to get into policy decisions. We assume you probably at least need to take 1 to 2 spaces out at that end of Middle to add a little right turn pocket in. If the city wanted to have better traffic flow, you could have a longer right turn pocket and you'd have to lose more parking spaces. My assumption is you wouldn't want to do that, but that could happen. You could remove more parking spaces if you wanted better traffic flow, but I don't think you need to. I think it works okay with just a loss of 1 or 2 spaces. I know Eric's looked into delivery parking a little bit, and that's maybe a separate issue.
Yeah, that's one concern I have, Mark, is that you often see now tractor trailers will just stop in one of the travel lanes on State Street and make the deliveries. They won't pull over to the curb and use a loading zone, and something like that obviously wouldn't be able to happen with the two-way traffic flow. They would have to pull over to the curb somewhere. So that may mean reconfiguration of some parking into loading zones at different hours of loading times, maybe, trying to accommodate the deliveries more than they are now.
Do you see envision a bike lane as part of this at all?
No.
No.
There's not enough real estate to do a bike lane.
It would remain Sharrow's.
Yeah, it'd be a shadowed roadway.
Harold.
Yeah. I'm probably the only one in this room that remembers when Daniel Street and State Street was two ways.
No, I remember it.
Because, no, you don't go back that far. We're trying to get the Navy Yard traffic to stop. Instead of going down to the Seabrook dog track, instead of going to the Hilltop Steakhouse, we wanted them to stay in the city of Portsmouth. Cash your checks on the shipyard and spend your money downtown Portsmouth. But it didn't work. They still had boarded up. It worked a little while, but it didn't work too much. Yeah. But I go back a lot of years. State Street and Daniel Street, two ways. Yeah.
So does that mean good ideas come back, or any other comments, questions? Yes.
This might be more for Peter, but what is the next step after this set of modeling? Is there more modeling? Is it put on pause while the rest of the details for the Market Square revision plan kind of work themselves out, and you guys work on that? Where does this go from here?
At this point, we need to get into the Market Square revisioning process, and that public process is going to involve a number of meetings and a lot of discussion. I would envision this report getting put together in a manner that's a draft final. In that here's where we're at. If we have revisions to this, if we have information relative to specific development, the model can be tweaked to address specific development and how that can impact. But at this point, I think this really gives us good food for thought relative to whether this can work, and it shows yes, it can work. Some of the ancillary things that don't really get fleshed out well, I think can be commented on. It's hard to. I don't know if this model has the ability to really tease out impacts to speed and those types of things. But we know that the result will be a reduced speed. We know that pedestrians will be safer. So there's, I think we have the information we need at this point. Gotcha. And once we get additional information or additional scenario we want to run, this model is updated and would be updated again to be able to be used.
Great, thank you.
I just have a comment and then a question. So, comment, I want to thank Councilor Moreau and Chairman Shellman for encouraging this review. The timing is fantastic to look forward in the future as we approach Market Square renewal. It's a traffic model, so it really is focusing on traffic. So actually, I had two questions. You mentioned the speed change. I'm curious about air quality impacts, whether we would get some understanding of what the emissions effect of these changes would be. I hope it would be positive, but I don't know. And then the other thing is Rick brought up pedestrians, and I think we need to remember that there are many elements that this model, the presentation, could not cover. Could be anything: pedestrian safety, landscaping. There's a beautiful tree at Middle and State that I love. I hope that wouldn't be affected. But so I just am really pleased to see this as a proactive look at things. But I would look at some of the other impacts too as we think about this down the road, and I know we will in the process. So, any other comments, thoughts? Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to move on now to formerly item 7A, the mini roundabout at Bartlett and Thornton. Staff presentation on that, or any comments? And I think responding to some of the comments that we heard from people. And cognizant of time, I've lost my, it's, 9:44. So, thank you. Eric?
Yes. So we have a report back on some information we found on the roundabout trial, and just want to start off by regurgitating how we've got to this point. And I think it was brought up in a lot of the comments from the public comments Originally this was a two-way stop, and there was speeding issues on Bartlett Street. Eventually, it became a four-way stop in order to slow down the speeds, especially those left turns into Randy's front steps. It's been successful, but with the four-way stop not being warranted based on the volumes out there, you have the problem of vehicles not stopping at the four-way stop, and that becoming an enforcement issue. That's one of the side impacts of when you put a four-way stop in where it's not warranted. It's not the proper way to deal with the traffic at that intersection. And for years, the neighborhood has asked for ways to calm traffic and speeds on Bartlett Street, and we are in the process of designing full corridor improvements to Bartlett Street, which will include other traffic calming measures. As this intersection, we looked at we came up with alternatives when we met with the neighborhood, different ways that traffic could be treated at this intersection in other than a four-way stop, something that could possibly work better. And alternatives that were presented to the neighborhood was a raised intersection similar to what is on Maplewood at a couple of intersections on Maplewood Ave. It's similar to a speed bump, but it's an entire raised intersection. And the other alternative we presented was this mini roundabout idea. And at those neighborhood meetings, there was a consensus that they wanted to give this roundabout trial a shot. So that's what we've done. We've gone out there and we purchased temporary materials at rather low cost. It was less than $10,000 to implement this. And it was constructed April 20th, and we've been monitoring it with a camera. This is a screenshot here of the camera. We've been monitoring it on a daily basis with the video. We've looked at speeds and volume data, and I have some of that data in the packet. What we have found is, there was claims of, the traffic there's more traffic coming to the circle now, more traffic coming to this intersection, or traffic is diverting from this intersection. It was very surprising to find that the traffic volumes are exactly the same as they were with the four-way stop. No change. I was surprised myself to see that, but it is very much the same volume. The one difference, however, is that instead of the majority of vehicles coming up Bartlett taking a left onto Thornton, now the majority is going straight to Dennett Street. So there is still a lot of traffic making the left turn, but the higher percentage is going straight to Dennett. And what we saw with the speeds that we measured out there, we took this as, I think it was about a week or two into the trial. Yeah, the dates are 5/11, 5/13. So actually, that was just a couple weeks ago. Average speeds coming through the roundabout and heading straight up to Dennett Street was 16 miles an hour for an average speed, 19 for an 85th percentile. So the speeds are still below the posted speed limit of 20 miles per hour out there. It's possible that the vehicles are getting used to the circle and being able to get through it a little quicker. And one of the things I'd point out is that because this is a trial, we didn't do the full design build of the formal roundabout that would be out there. We didn't impact the curbing on the sides of the road, at the intersection corners. And that would have an impact of the ability for vehicles to get through on a straight line. So with a full implementation, that would be changed. Also, the center island height, it's at 4 or 5 inches right now. That would come down a little bit under a permanent condition, make it easier for snow plows, make it also easier for vehicles to drive over it. We've seen vehicles driving over the middle of the circle intentionally, I might add. Someone in a Jeep, I think they decided this was a good place to go try their off-road capabilities. So it's other vehicles, have a trouble getting around it, but for the most part, we have videos and we've seen it. Larger pickup trucks with trailers are getting around the circle. It does take a couple tries maybe at first. In my full-size pickup, I didn't make it the first time, but you come back and you know which way to go around the circle. You can make it. The crosswalks that was brought up, the steepness, that's true. They do not meet ADA standards, the temporary crosswalks we put in, because we would have had to do a lot of curb work and a lot of other work in order to meet those grades. So we did a temporary asphalt patch on the ramps, which would be, in a full permanent installation, we would get those all to grades and make it meet all standards for wheelchair ramps and accessibility. We would close off the existing corners where the sidewalks are now. A lot of pedestrians still just like to go a straight line. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. You get people walking through the middle of the intersection at times because there's just not a lot of traffic at all times of the day. And the utility pole in the corner where it was mentioned that someone almost hit that and they had to back up, that utility pole would most likely be relocated away from the intersection if that became permanent. So there are tweaks that will be done. This has been a good learning experience for us, being able to watch how traffic uses it, and we've made it It does meet standards for mini roundabouts. It's the latest guidance in the industry standards from Federal Highway and Institute of Transportation Engineers. This circle diameter meets the standards, meets the current guidelines. So the splitter islands coming into it are a little short. They would be lengthened in the future with crosswalks, built into those. But the actual in diameter of the interior circle would not be much different than it is now. So the grading of the roadway would change. Right now, as you're coming around from Bartlett to Thornton, you go out at an angle like this, and there's some holes in there with some water gates. That would all be fixed, the grading and the drainage structure, so you'd have a better surface coming through there. It is a tight circle, and you notice that some people are more aggressive than others coming through there, some not yielding, some not, just taking their advantage and barging through. But if everybody yields and learns, I think most people have driven through a roundabout, they know how to yield. This is a smaller one than they've seen in other places in the state. All vehicles have to yield coming into a roundabout. That's true nationwide now. It's not different in any state nearby. Everybody has to yield coming into a roundabout. The signs are out there informing people. People don't always read signs, but they're there. There was a question as well, they're going faster now with the roundabout than they were with the stop signs. Well, I certainly hope so. When they had stop signs, they're supposed to stop. They were rolling through, so they were going at a slow speed through there, but it wasn't working, and now they are going a little faster. But, typically in a roundabout, the speeds are kept slow so that if there is any accident, it's usually a side swipe or an angle, and there's not a lot of damage caused by an accident at a roundabout. So I think what we have seen is the speeds are below the posted speed limit. We can check that again, make sure that they haven't gotten used to it and found a faster way through there. And it has shifted the volumes at the intersection, but it has not increased the traffic at the intersection or decreased it. I think until we can change the big circle out on the bypass and fix the signals on the bypass at Coakley Cottage and Borthwick and Hodgson Way, I think people are going to continue to use Bartlett Street as a bypass. It's much easier to get, if you're going north on the Turnpike, to come up through Bartlett Street, Woodbury Ave, and take a left on Rockingham, and rather than going into the circle. It saves a lot of time, a lot easier. So until those situations on the bypass are fixed, this is going to continue to be a cut-through route, and that's why the project we have for Bartlett Street will address that, other additional traffic calming measures. And as an addition, we are working on Woodbury Ave. We're looking to install some temporary speed cushions this month, and that will be impacting cut-through traffic as well. See if there's any others. We did get a lot of emails on this, and I've included most of them in your packet, or I emailed them to you yesterday, and I summarized some of the comments I saw. Drivers not noticing the crosswalks because they are set back farther from the intersection. In a permanent installation, we could add pedestrian warning signs. We could even add the RRFBs, the flashing lights. Those have been asked for before at the intersection, but we can't put them in at the intersection when it's a four-way stop. They're not allowed. If it's a yield intersection with a crosswalk set further back, then we could do the RFBs. Let's see. We had comments that the circle was too big, it was too hard to drive around. We had comments that the circle was not big enough to force them to slow down. So you get a lot of opinions one way or the other, but it does meet the standards for a mini roundabout on the design standards. Snow plowing, I mean, these mini roundabouts have been used in many cities around the country where they have snow. It's not an issue. It does take some getting used to and training and dealing with it, but it is possible to do it. Final materials, aesthetics, that was a major concern. So right now it was just done with pavement as a temporary measure to get it out there, but you could do much more aesthetic treatment for the circle. It has to be mountable and drivable, so it would have to be something with possibly granite curbing along the edges, cobblestone in the middle, or brick, or pavement, or pavers. Some type of aesthetic treatment. It would look better than the pavement that's out there now. We still couldn't put signs in it because larger vehicles do need to drive over the middle island. So the sight lines are, there is an issue with sight lines, but if we can get the final design would have a little bit more a deflection coming into the circle. Right now you're pretty much of a straight shot, and we could change the islands that you're coming in at more of an angle, and it forces you to slow down, and that forces drivers to yield, and that would alleviate the sight issues, the sight line issues on the one approach of Thornton Street. And
Eric, I think you've done a fantastic job at responding to a lot of the comments that we received today and via email, and I think we all acknowledge that this was a temporary, that the final, if we stick with this, will be much different aesthetically and maybe address some of these issues. The speed one, just a question on your data.
Yep.
So to me, speed is like, at what point are you measuring the speed?
Yes.
So could you respond to like, where is that single-digit speed number? What is that? Approach, exit, center? What are you measuring now?
we set the radar device up right at the corner of Randy's driveway, facing the circle. So it was able to get vehicles coming through the circle, up Bartlett Street, coming through to Dennett Street. This is the through traffic that it measured. It didn't measure the traffic turning left or turning right, just the traffic coming towards Dennett Street.
After all of Eric's comments and what we heard, do committee members have any quick comments or questions for Eric? Mark first, then.
I was going to make a motion, but go ahead.
Oh, I just wonder if we could hear from police and fire regarding their vehicles.
No issues from police? So you saw the video last month of our largest truck. We're able to traverse it. It works for us.
Okay. And a second question, when will the full implementation occur? We're still on a pilot?
So the funding is part of this year's CIP. No, it was last year's CIP. So we have funding. We have funding to move forward with it. We have a couple of easements that we're working on in order for us to finalize the design. Once we've secured those easements, we anticipate being out to bid probably this fall. So it'll likely, given this construction schedule, it'll probably come next spring construction.
Okay. And then a quick question regarding pedestrians. I didn't see any data regarding pedestrians, but I was concerned about the crosswalks not being visible enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we did get that comment from watching the videos myself of out there. Most pedestrians are still using the old locations of the crosswalks. They're not traveling over to the new ones.
Right.
But most of the time, there's not traffic coming when they do that, so they know they're not being conflicting with vehicles. I think the volumes that I had in the packet, they may have had volumes, pedestrian volumes, that we've seen. Yeah. These side streets, you have 4 pedestrians, 3 pedestrians.
Yeah.
3 or 4 pedestrians crossing during the peak hour. Mm-hmm. Peter, before we take another question, could you amplify your schedule? To me, the issue is when do we need to have a decision on this intersection in terms of your timeline for the Bartlett Street project?
Well, we need to finalize the design, and as I said, we're working on some final easements on a different section of the roadway. So I mean, it'd be we have some time still. We can proceed with the design for this and an alternate approach. So it's just some additional effort. It would be nice just to know one way or the other, but we can always have 2 alternatives and bid it as an alternate and see what the cost implications are.
Okay. Erica, did you have your hand up?
My question was, when do you need a decision by?
At this point, I think we have another a month or so that we could another month probably, I would think we could hold off on. Given the information that I've seen and received, I'm comfortable with the configuration, the roundabout approach. I understand if the general consensus for the residents is not that, that's fine as well.
Is that a motion?
That was not a motion.
Not a motion yet. Mark, one more question? Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, accept a motion if someone would like to make
Motion
one.
to continue the pilot program for another 30 days.
I'll second that.
Second it, did you?
Motion's been made to continue the pilot for 30 days. Seconded. Any comments?
My only comment is, can you give a taste to the public on what the adjustments you can be making this summer? And I'd like to see the numbers, the traffic numbers in the summer. June, July, August, it seems like, my question to an engineer would be, are you anticipating more traffic because of the summer months?
Not typically. We've counted this intersection several times in the summer and off time, and the volumes are very consistent throughout the year. I think it's reflective of the fact that it's a cut-through route, that we're getting a lot of commuter traffic through here.
Is there anything that you can do between now and the next 30 days that you're planning on doing that you can share with the public that's like tweaking? You said the word tweaking. What's going to happen in the next, say, 30 days? What can the public, if somebody, you said tweaking, but what does that mean? What are you planning on doing or thinking about doing?
Well, the pedestrian crossing signs, we could put up some warning signs for the crosswalks just to bring drivers' attention to where they are located now. Other than that, we have a little bit of curbing we could put on the corners, but I don't know how effective that would be. We don't have enough to do the full design length of curbing.
Yeah, I don't, other than potentially some additional signage, the tweaking he's referring to is during the final design.
Okay.
Maybe instead of curbing, paint, is there any paint that can go with the signage? But I think we want to observe it as is, pretty much, unless there's a necessary minor change.
As is.
I would only add, and this is a request, that you've done a fantastic job at summarizing things today for the benefit of the public, those main questions and comments that were raised about speed. If we could maybe have a little FAQ or observation to date document that people can see, I think would be really helpful. But you've done a great job, but document some of that. Erica.
I know there's a lot of how to drive a roundabout videos out there. Maybe we could post something like that to one of our social media, or I don't know.
Yeah. Or
Whatever.
put it in the same document.
Yeah, just to help with some of the good driving behavior that it sounds like the majority of people are doing, but perhaps a few would benefit from additional reminders.
So I have a motion and a second. Motion is to continue the pilot with observation and some documentation for the next 30 days. Are we ready to vote on that?
Sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstain? No? Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Thank you to the staff for all the excellent work you're doing on this issue, too.
Just sit here as a member.
So now we're going to go back to new business 4A, item 4A.
That's right.
Court Place, request to relocate handicap parking spaces by South Church.
Move to accept recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of 4A?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain? It's unanimous. 4B, request to raise the threshold for boot and tow for unpaid tickets from the current $125 to $250. Does staff want to speak to this, or are we ready for a motion?
The Director of Parking is here to speak to this if necessary. I think it's pretty straightforward, but it brings it in line with, so that it's actually more commensurate with what it goes on the street. But Ben Fletcher could speak to it quickly.
Yes, Ben,
Is that
please.
motion made already?
No.
We're going to let Ben speak first for just a couple minutes, and then a motion.
Sure. So we increased the fine for a citation from 15 to 35 a while back, and this ordinance has been in place for years and years. With the $15 citation, it would take 5 or 6 citations to get on this boot and tow list. What this does is it actually increases the number of citations that are required to get somebody to that point, simply because at this point, 3 citations unpaid with the $20 penalty puts you on the boot and tow list, and we just thought that was a bit excessive.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Oh, I have a question.
Comment? Yes.
Does the city get the money from this, or the towing company? How is that?
So if a vehicle's removed, the towing company takes care of that. And
They get the $250.
Well, yeah, if we move a vehicle. We don't move a lot of vehicles, though.
Oh, you don't?
No, we'd rather boot them and have the people come in and
How long do you
and
accept the
reconcile.
booting for? How many days? I mean, if somebody's booted, is there a period of time before they're towed?
Typically, it's 24 hours.
24 hours.
A little bit, depending on we might give them a little more time if it's depending on how the weekend falls.
Uh-huh.
Everybody hear that? It's
Yeah.
typically 24 hours. If it's a weekend or a holiday, we might give people a little bit more time.
So this 250 goes to the towing company, is what you're telling us?
So, okay, so maybe we're not being clear here. So the ordinance is, right now, if you have $125 in outstanding fines,
Yeah.
you are eligible to be booted and towed.
Yeah.
This increases that to $250. That's all.
Okay.
So it's not a matter of money going to a certain place or another.
That's what
This is
my
just a
question.
penalty.
I wondered if they were being, okay, I get it.
Sure.
Yes, Harold.
Just one question. Did you do a comparison with other cities like Dover to see what the...
Not really. We just thought that raising it from 3 citations that would put you over this limit to 5 citations putting you over this limit was a little more reasonable.
I see, okay. All right, thank you.
Erica.
And the citations, it's like at any snapshot in time, what's outstanding, right? Like, it's not like if you get 5 citations in a year or 3 citations in a year, you get booted. It's if you get 3 citations and you pay them right away, you can get 3 more citations and pay them right away, no problem.
This has to do with outstanding balance, yes.
Outstanding balance, okay.
Can we, ready for a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor of the change, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Okay.
Where are we anyway?
We are now going to item 7B.
All right.
Correct? Yes, 7B. Islington Street and Middle Road speed limit trials.
Move to accept recommendation.
Yeah, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the changes to make those speed limit, 25 speed limit permanent on these 2 road segments, say aye.
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 Any abstain or opposed? Unanimous. Okay, item 7C, loading zones. Approval of a change in parking hours at select locations. Any background on this that we're going to get, please?
So some time ago, we did an extensive study of the use of loading zones and determined that in many cases that they were not utilized as loading zones after a certain time of day. So we made an effort to share the loading zones with regular parking after a certain time period. So we were able to gain, 29 spaces, I think, in inventory throughout the city as on a part-time basis. It has it's a little bit of a nugget for locals because most non-resident visitors don't recognize loading zones as viable parking. So I know that Councilor Bagley's not here today, but he's very fond of being able to know where there's going to be parking available for him when he comes into town. And so this basically just will solidify this in ordinance by the passing of the omnibus on 7/1 of this year.
And those are all metered.
Correct. They're metered through the Park Mobile app system. Yeah.
Any comments, questions for Eric?
I just add, the committee did vote on this last month, but we neglected to put the information in the packet as to what you were voting on. So we have the details in here for you.
So that triggers a need to vote on it again.
Yes.
Okay. So, anyone want to propose a motion?
So moved.
Sample?
Second.
Erica seconds. All those in favor of the motion as written,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstain? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, items 8A, informational report, monthly accident report from the police.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. April, we had a total of 53 crashes. 36 of those 53 were reportable. We had 1 motor vehicle collision involving a bicyclist and no motor vehicle collisions involving pedestrians.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, thank you very much for your report. Next item, 8B, the mayor's bike ride date has been changed. Eric.
Yes. The bike ride was rained out on its original date, and so it has been rescheduled for June 11th, which is a Sunday at noon, and it will start at the Little Harbor School and do a loop out to Pease and back to end the Little Harbor School.
Fantastic.
Hopefully it won't rain that time.
All right, great. And it was an excellent event last year. I would encourage everyone to participate in that. And Peter, I assume, update on Islington Street reconstruction phase 2.
Islington Street has been a slow start. However, after the parade this weekend, it is intended to start in earnest next week.
Fantastic.
So look forward to the progress.
It'll be down to one lane of traffic, alternating traffic on this.
Okay, so be prepared.
Yes.
And I did notice that the digital signs are alerting people as we speak. Any other items to bring before the committee today? Erica.
I had a question. Summer and Middle is under construction right now. Is that just utility work, or is that part
Yes.
of, the
That's
intersection?
part of the Union Street project.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it the redesign that's happening, or is it
No.
just the utility work?
That's the utility work.
Okay, that's what I thought. But good to know.
Any other comments, questions, issues?
Will we see the final plans for that project, for this intersection plan before it goes?
Yes.
Okay.
What year is that planned for?
Probably next year, once the utility project's done.
Great. Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So move.
Seems like it's unanimous. All in favor of adjourning? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.